Ladies and gentlemen, through time and space, disagreements are known to disunite man, but here on the Great Debaters Contest, we bring together over 500 schools to do one thing, debate. This is Rift Valley Region. I am your host, Chris Bodro.
And I am Esperantia Kapanga. In today's conversation, we are trying to find a solution to the plaguing problem of corruption, with a motion stating civil protest and demonstrations are the sure way of fighting corruption.
In the proposition are the gentlemen from Kipsigak Boys High School.
And in the opposition, we have the gentleman from Lelmokwo Boys High School. Proposal number 1, you have 3 minutes to make your argument.
If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you claim to be neutral, then you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Lovely words from Desmond Tutu. Levron Stephen from Kipsigak High School, proposing the motion, civil protests and demonstrations are the sure way of fighting corruption. Definition of terms: civil, relating to or consisting of citizens. Protest, disagreeing strongly with something, often by making a formal statement or by taking action in public. Corruption, dishonest or illegal behavior by officials or people in position of power, especially when they exchange money in exchange for doing things for someone. Civil protest, mark the word civil protest. This is a peaceful protest. On to my first point. Civil protesting and demonstrating have in the recent years helped in stopping corruption. Recently, in Nairobi, protesters marched on the streets after a revelation of $100 million money that had been stolen, which was to be used for the project of the country. This protest came about after 24 of the officials of the government were charged in court because they were involved in this situation. By the protest of the people, the government took action, and this money was to be looked for and to be found and returned so as for the use to the projects of the country. On to my next point. We have tried all means, but nothing has happened. Corruption organs have been set up, like the corruption organs, ethics, and anti-corruption of Kenya. But they keep blinding us with the mentality that they are still doing investigations. Sir Buckminster Fuller said that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing absolute. If we apply civil protests and demonstrations, we are sure to succeed in stopping corruption. I want to help stop corruption, so if it is civil protesting that will fight and stop corruption to the end, then I'm ready to use it so as to help stop corruption. Thank you.
First opposer, you have 3 minutes to make your case.
A man who uses force is afraid of listening. This is Walter Kigen from Lelmokwo Boys High School. It is due to rise in the cases of corruption that we are looking for ways to solve it. Among the ways that we found is civil protests and demonstrations. But now, we want to look at the base. So, at the moment we have civil protests and demonstrations on the table. And I here stand strongly to oppose the motion, as it is not sailing in the same boat as the Sustainable Development Goals. The first proposer talked about the Nairobi protest. So, were it not for that protest, if they had used other means, couldn't it have been solved? Ask yourself that question as you fly with me onto my first point. It is a primitive way of solving corruption. Why do I say it is primitive? At this time, we are saying that we need democracy. We elect leaders. What is the reason as to why we elect leaders? We elect leaders so as to fight against what we are oppressed. When we are oppressed in terms of corruption, these leaders are the ones that we are supposed to send them to go and fight against the corruption. It is said that if a cockroach wants to rule over the chicken, then it must hire a fox. I want to ask you, a citizen is just like a cockroach. And for you to approach or to destroy that corruption that we are fighting against, will you just go as yourself or employ a fox? Of course, you'll employ a fox. And that fox is none other than leaders. Now, if you go to the streets demonstrating, just shouting and demonstrating, it is said that many words can never fill a basket. No matter how many words you utter in the streets, it won't fill that basket of fighting corruption. And to my second point, demonstrations and civil protests leads to pollution of environment. Why do I say it leads to pollution of environment? We all know that in demonstrations, it involves things like burning tires and many other things. So when we burn tires, this will pollute our environment. But as you all know that fireworks emit toxic fumes. And when they emit these toxic fumes, we find that our environment will not be safe. So that will distract our aim to achieve SDG goal number 15, which talks about environmental conservation. The next one is, my last point is that it leads to loss of lives. I strongly stand saying that civil protest and demonstration is a precarious way of fighting corruption. Let us open our eyes and see. I rest my case.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty, truth, and compassion against corruption. Injustice, lying, and greed. If people all over the world do this, change the world. First of all, I would like to correct my fellow members who said that protest. There is difference between a protest and to protest. First of all, to protest, that is protest without an S. That is a peaceful demonstration. We were peacefully demonstrating to fight for corruption. We are not protesting. First and foremost, protest beyond the law is not against democracy. It's only about the essentials of it. On to my first point, bring people together and raise their voice. Now, we want to bring people together so that they can raise their voice, so that they can be heard. This issue of fighting corruption, we are not dealing with one person ideology. No, we want to collect the view of the people so that we can fight corruption. The leaders are not the ones which are being affected. No, the fellow citizens. That's why we are saying that let us all arise and go and do a peaceful demonstration so that our rights can be followed. We want to fight corruption. That is the main enemy that is being in us. Now, in the issue of leaders, it takes an example of the Eurobond. The former head of that NYS, that was Madam Anne Waiguru, was then drawn there because of corruption. Where are the millions of money of this NYS group are going? It is taken by the leaders who are leading them. So I'm not seeing any way that we can elect leaders, yet they are the ones who are corrupting us. Secondly, we want to lower the individual knowledge and focuses on collective views. Initially, traditionally, we used to see people coming together and settle disputes. But nowadays, this issue of corruption has become rampant. And the way we can solve is by collecting the people views and leaving the individual views. For example, when we take the issue that's again the NYS again. If we were dealing with the issue, only the Anway Guru was the one who was dealing with this money. And then where would the other people have been following that issues? No, we want to raise the voice of the people so that the people can be heard, because they are the one who are being corrupted, not the leaders. Only the leaders are the people who are just corrupting them. So we are finding the ways that we can kill this enemy called corruption. Recently in Thailand, the citizens of Thailand have protested against the construction project which was going on there. The Thailand country or government were planning to build the lawyers and the officials of the government houses there. Where are those money going? It is just about corruption. And when you look that, the money which we are then using to build for the government officials houses, they could have been used to help the needy. Thank you. Alex Kaleke from Kipsigak High School.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Honorable adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen, in front of you is Abraham Kimeli representing Lelmokwo. Solidarity, solidarity. That has been a major song. They normally say, great thinking simplifies stupidity. If you take an example, if we continue rioting, and yet there are no things that are done to ensure that we stop corruption, they normally say, the sweeter the meat, the nearer the bond. And the nearer the bond, the higher chances of losing your teeth. What do I mean? When we protest, it doesn't mean that we are going to stop corruption. There are many devices that we can use to ensure that corruption is stopped in our country. That has become a rampant. And to my first point, it derails the economy of the country. The SDG number 8 talks of economic growth. Like some years past, 2017, we had an election, and there were some people who are protesting that they are not recognizing our president currently to be their leader, and they were given directives not to purchase things in a certain company or to derive from doing the right thing. That made our country economy to go down. I want to correct my proposer who said that they are peaceful demonstration. Yeah, they are peaceful demonstration, but they normally say the most beautiful fig may contain a worm. Inside that demonstration, there are people who are having two minds. Their mindset or the things that they are thinking are negative. They just want to do the demonstration so that they can satisfy their needs. They can go do robbery with violence, and that is a vice. Another point, it breeds hatred. Let's take, for example, you've rioted and you are being recognized that you are the ringleader. When an action that you took led to loss of lives, they are going to take those people who are leading the strikes. And by doing so, it will bring about hatred, whereby people will be detained. And when they are detained, when they are scot-free, when they look for employment, they look at the register. And bearing in mind that when you do a crime, your fingerprints are taken. And that makes your lives to be jeopardized. Hence, I want to say that civil protest and demonstration are not the sure ways of fighting corruption. They are devices that can be used so that we can fight corruption. Thank you very much.
The proposers have been asked, are we to blame leaders or blame everyone for corruption in our countries? The opposers have been asked, what is the surest way to fight corruption if not the above stated methods? Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
First, to answer the question that have been asked, it is you are either with them or against them. Corruption. We are really tired of hearing the same things. Every day we wake up to the news of a corrupt person in our country. And let's face it, trying to eradicate corruption is like chasing a butterfly. You know, to catch a butterfly, you must catch it from a different perspective or a different angle, and it will directly land on your palms. Kelvin Amdavi is strongly opposing the motion that says civil protests and demonstrations are the surest way of fighting corruption. On to my first point. First, it is enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution. Chapter 4, Article 37 clearly states that every Kenyan citizen has a right to assemble peacefully and unarmed, to picket and to present petitions to the given authorities. Secondly, they gain helpful media attention. Take a scenario like this. And in other news, Kenyan citizens have taken to the streets to protest against the scenario of corruption, which was had 2 weeks ago about the Eurobond saga. Jeff Koinange reporting for Citizen News. They will gain helpful media attention and the leaders will get the message and what they are trying to give them. Thirdly, looking at countries that have engaged in corruption, in anti-corruption protests, they have shown that it's the best method. India, Russia, Venezuela have taken to the streets to protest. They even went a point to even trying to ban the parliament in order to end corruption in their countries. Martin Luther said that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. When I was a child, I learned that making noise was the best thing. As I came from school, my mother would deny me sometimes biscuits when I asked for it. But when I made the noise, she gave me. Then I learned that corruption is the best way of fighting corruption. And I'll first try to tell you my opposers that differentiate between civil protest and protest. A civil protest is a peaceful protest and it's legal and well organized. But protests are rampant and illegal. But if we remain silent, I'll be guilty of complicity. Thank you.
That opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond.
The adjudicators, the House of Proposing and the House of Opposing. Allow me to answer the question asked that give the ways of combating corruption. Okay, the question is very interesting because it enables us now to overcome the situation at hand whereby we are trying to combat corruption. So I'll advise the person who asked that same question that corruption we can only fight corruption through means that do not have side effects, and if they have effects, they are minimal. One of the examples or the means that we can use to fight corruption is the use of dialogue. When we embrace dialogue to address any challenge that may face our normal lives as citizens of this country, we shall move very far. But because when we use not corruption, but demonstrations and civil protests, they may lead to loss of lives, they may lead to destruction of property, they may lead to detention of the people who are citizens of this same country. Another way we can use is the mass media or the social platforms whereby we are using the Twitter platforms, the Facebook, the Snapchat, or even the WhatsApp groups that we have to discuss and try to come up with a solution of fighting this same corruption. Okay, and to my first point, Kipsigak Collins proposing from Lelmokwo Boys High School. And I support that when we should not use civil protests and demonstrations to fight corruption because civil protests and demonstrations lead to detention and breach of human rights. You know what I mean by this? When you move right now to Moscow, Russia, there was a demonstration on 14th July whereby whereby hundreds of Moscow residents were arrested. Why? They were protesting against the release of one Ivan Gulanov of the same Russia who had been arrested for peddling drugs. But because the governments that we have all over the world, they are almost similar, they released him because they said he was associated with the Tammy Buried fellows we know. So I think we should not use demonstrations because they demonstrated right now, they are rotting in jail or they are rotting in temporary detention. Had they used other means, they won't be there. 2 days later, 2 days before, that was on July 12th, this same year, in Japan, Shayatima district, whereby we found that in Japan, there were citizens who had been protesting. They were protesting against the air. They were feeling that they were being overcharged. The goods which were being sold at a supermarket in the same city, whereby this same supermarket was selling jewelries. Now, these citizens in Japan, they rioted. Why? Because they said they were being overcharged, and the outcome, they destroyed property worth $15.6 in millions. Do you understand what I mean by that? $15.6 million. Just because of the same thing we are calling, they were trying to fight, they were trying to protest for their own rights. No, if it means that we regulate the freedom we have of freedom of expression so that we can overcome these different challenges we are facing as a country or as a world at large, then if it means reforming the constitution, then Kevin, you will have to join me. We need to reform the constitution. Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute to wrap up your argument.
We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. While anger at injustices motivates bursts of action, activism can be sustained by collective empowerment. Citizens to fight the common enemy, and like-minded citizens to come up as a community to fight corruption. Either we stand together or divided. Together we stand, divided we fall. So civil protest will help us to stop and do away with the corruption. My colleague said that in Japan, there was a protest. But look at the bigger picture here. In Japan, it was not a civil protest, but it was a protest that was with crimes. It was not a protest that would benefit the people, but they were on to destroying stuff. Thank you.
Opposers, you have 1 minute to wrap up your argument.
I want to sum it up by telling you that PLO Lumumba once said, those with powers have got no ideas, but those without powers have the ideas. What do I mean? We don't need more leadership. We don't need more leaders. We need more leadership. And I want to quote a proverb. A man who uses force is afraid of reasoning. So it is hard time that we reason. It is hard time that we think so that we can solve some of the menace that is happening in our country in order to fight corruption. And I'll conclude by saying, you cannot change yesterday, but you can do something today that can change tomorrow. Thank you.
Kipsigak, I bet you to cite for us possibly countries that have adopted civil protests and have succeeded, and also contrast with those that have gone for the bloody protests and failed. For Lelmokwo, you are to give us alternatives or sure ways of fighting corruption apart from civil protests. Now, the two teams did not really bring out that well, so the motion was not really given the justice it deserved.
You failed us a little bit in doing what the motion demanded you to do. And to the speaker who refers to personalities, please give them their proper address. And when you are referring to a personality, you have no support to substantiate your argument, it's a bit disturbing. Most of you, whatever points you try to put across, should I call it pedestrian kind of argument, because you never supported your points. And it was just ordinary kind of argument. However, to the third speakers from both sides, you really tried to liven the whole thing and to bring us back on the track. I felt you really tried so much in your role.
The question to both of you is this: there are places where civil protests and demonstrations have worked. That means then, Kipsigak, you got a lot of examples. Why is Zimbabwe? I even had a student ask, we saw just the other day in Sudan, and there's al-Bashir was put down. All that, where are those examples? To the opposers, Lelmokwo. We have places where protests have been done and nothing, they haven't yielded any fruit, even here in Kenya. Where are those examples, honestly? All the best to both teams. After all is said and done, it's down to the numbers. With a difference of 1% between our intellectual teams on stage. Kipsigak Boys High School, the judges saw it fit to award you 64%. Let's give them a round of applause. Lelmokwo Boys High School, the judges awarded you 63%. Let's give them a round of applause. With that being said, we'd like to congratulate Kipsigak Boys High School for being the greater debater in this debate.
That's it for us today here on stage. But for you at home, remember to keep the conversation going across all our social media platforms. The hashtag is always GDC for SDGs. I have been your host, Esperancia Kapanga.
And until the next episode, I've been Chris Boru. Don't touch that dial.